Merry morning or magical midnight, my friends. I'm Tilly Treadwell, and tonight I have with me no stranger to the paranormal. I have Mr. Mike Clelland. Mike, how are you doing today?
Very good. How are you?
Lovely. Well, I'm doing wonderfully. Thank you for asking. And I am excited to be here. I think that we've got a lot to chat about, and I can't wait to dig in. So, a lot of people, they know you in relation to owls and the connections to UFOs and non-human people. How did you get involved with all of that?
Ooh, um, so I'm 61 now. When I
Uh-huh.
was 44, which is 18 years ago or something like that now, something like that,
Oh, my.
I was living in an area near Grand Teton National Park where
Okay.
I was doing a lot of outdoor work. At the time, I was teaching for an outdoor school. I taught camping and I taught backpacking and skiing and such like that. And I was in this beautiful place, and there was a woman that was worked at the same school I did. I had been up in Alaska all summer, so when I came back down to Idaho, she was working at the branch of the school that is right down the road from where I lived. And I said, "Oh, you've been," and she'd been there all summer, and in the right near Grand Teton National Park, which is right next to Yellowstone, so really beautiful wild country.
Mm.
And I said, "Wow, you've been here all summer. You must have camped a lot." And she said, "Oh, I didn't camp once." And
Oh,
it was the end of the year. It was autumn, and I was like, "Oh, I'll take you camping." Now I've told this story many times, and some people are like, "What do you like?" So this was a complete stranger. It was, I don't know if a first date is quite the term, but it was a really normal thing in that kind of outdoor environment, just to say, "Hey, let's
nice.
go camping." So we went camping, and the weather was beautiful, and we knew we were going to go for just one night, and I was very comfortable in the terrain there. And just a simple weather check, as well as, quite honestly, in the autumn in that part of the Northern Rockies, you can just look to the east and you know what the weather is going to do. So
Wow.
we expected a beautiful, calm, clear night.
Mhm.
So we went out camping for one night, and with the light packs, we could get deep, deep, deep into the mountains in within just a few hours. So I was sitting on a rock making dinner in a little camp stove, and we were surrounded by a field of wildflowers in a beautiful, extraordinary place. And this woman, her name is Kristen. We're still quite good friends. She was she was telling me something, and I was really struck. I was like, wow, this person is there's much more depth. This was a complete stranger.
Yeah,
There's much
yeah.
more depth, and there's much more. There's just a smart, thoughtful person. We were talking about spiritual things.
Mhm.
And as I had that realization, like, whoa, this person's smarter than I thought. And an owl flew over my head and our heads, and then
Mm.
another owl, and then a third owl. And these three owls flew around us for the next few hours as we didn't bring any camping gear beyond just sleeping pads and sleeping bags. So we just set our sleeping pads down on the ground, and as when the sun
Okay.
was down, we laid down, and these owls were still flying around. So if you're laying on your back, and like the owl would like whoosh, fly right over our faces.
Really?
Yeah, and so owls are very silent in flight,
Yeah,
so there's nothing to hear, but we'd be
yeah,
looking up at the stars, and then just for like half a
yeah,
second, the stars would blot out.
yeah,
There was
yeah.
an owl flying right in front of our faces. And the next morning, it was like, wow, that was pretty cool.
Mhm.
And then afterwards, I dropped her off and I said, hey, that was fun. Like, let's, if you're interested, we can do that again. And she said,
Yeah.
great. So we went camping 4 days later, as the sun was setting, we walked to a hilltop to watch the sunset, excuse me. Three owls flew over us, around us, landed on branches, swooped near us. Before, 4 days earlier, we were in a completely different part of the mountains. This time, 4 days later, the owls, the first time, they would kind of keep their distance. They would kind of land on a branch over there somewhere. But
Yeah.
this time, they landed at our feet. And I just remember Kristen, like seeing her, like just this expression of astonishment on her face.
Oh, for
Uh,
sure.
yeah. So these were what's called short-eared owls. They're not very big. They're maybe 8 10 inches tall. They're cute. And so they were
Oh,
like super curious.
uh-huh.
And I did not say this then, but I'm saying it now. And I have been saying it, but I did not tell anyone about it initially. I wrote a diary entry and kept it in the diary entry. And the at the time of seeing the first owl and then the second set of owls, the same message was in my mind, very clear. It said this has something to do with the UFOs.
Mhm, mhm.
And this would have been 2006, and then after that, so to have it happen once was pretty cool, and to have it happen twice was positively like mystical. And both Kristen and I got all like, whoa, we were like, we were looking up spirit meaning of the owl and the mythological meaning of the owl and the synchronistic meaning of the owl. And it's a bottomless pit if you start looking this stuff, especially online. And now, in my youth, I had a set of experiences that certainly play out like UFO abduction.
Okay.
And I knew it. I knew that the stories felt like UFO abduction stories. When I was 12 years old, I came home from a high school football game, and there was like a bright flash in the sky, and I was with a friend, and it felt like the sky lit up orange, and then whoosh, just went right back to the nighttime sky. This is in Michigan where I grew up. And then when I got home, I knew we were at a high school football game. I lived very close to the high school. I knew how long it took me to get home. And there was a television show I wanted to watch. I told my parents I'd be home at 9:30 at night. I walked in the door and they were saying, "Why are you out so late?" And I'm like, "I'm not out late. I know exactly. I am
Yeah.
home in time to see the show." And they said, "No,
What are you talking
it's
about?
11:30 at night. So there's 2 hours of missing time." And then I had another event with uh, another friend, also when I was 12 years old, named Kenny. And that was, um, we both saw together from his house out his bedroom window at night. It was a sleepover. We were little kids. And there was something. Here's the peanut butter jar. This is perfect. So here's a peanut butter jar. And
Yeah.
so this thing was descending in this smooth way. And it was about the shape like I got all the props here, don't I? It was a
You
peanut butter jar with a
peanut
pencil here. I'm
butter
using a
on. Yeah, I
pen.
kind of
I'm
dig
using a
it.
pen here. There we go. So this is a pen. It would look like this. It was
Okay.
probably a little shorter. Oops, I'm going to hide it like this. It looks probably a little more like that, but I'm going to use the whole pen here. And it was
Huh.
coming down at this weird angle. So a helicopter would fly like this, and an airplane would fly like that. But this was rotating at this very strange angle, very smooth, eerily smooth. And both Kenny and I saw it at the same time. And we went downstairs and we both drew it. And I still have the picture from when I was 12. Now, when I was 30, I was
Mhm.
44 at the time of the event with Kristen. When I
Yeah.
was 30, I had an event where I woke up in the middle of the night and I was living in Maine. It was
Mhm.
wintertime, Christmas, January, either January or February. I think it was January. I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a, there was a bright light outside the window
Mhm.
of my bedroom. And I sat up in bed and looked out, and there were 5 gray aliens walking towards the house. The five of like the skinny beings with the bald heads and the big black eyes and the little tight fitting spacesuits. And by all accounts, I should have been terrified. I should have
Yeah.
totally been freaked out. But I did nothing. I just had a voice in my head that was like, "Oh yes, they're here. Now is the time to put your head on the pillow and shut down." And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So those events were in a handful more. Those are pretty telling. And I had been reading UFO literature around the time of when I saw this event, when I had this event. So I was like studying UFOs at the time. At the same time, I had these experiences that sure imply UFO contact, and I wasn't going there. I denied it all. I was like, no way, not me. Push it away. I'm not going there. Not gonna look at myself, and not gonna. And what happened was I started looking into the owls,
Mhm.
and very quickly that overlapped with the UFO stuff, and that I can trace to the voice in my head that said this has something to do with UFOs. So I had an event with owls, and I
Mhm.
started looking into my own UFO experiences. There's no UFO in the story except for the voice in my head, and I
Right.
started looking to my own experiences. So I started a blog, My blog initially was mostly about synchronicities, which I've had a lot of, powerful, meaningful coincidences. I've had a lot of them. So that
Mhm.
was the beginning of my blog. And
Mhm.
it very quickly turned into like UFO stuff, and it very quickly turned into owl stuff. So the story I just told with Kristen in the mountains in
Yes.
19 or 2006, that was within the first day or so of when I put the blog up. I think it's the second post on the blog. And I told it just like I told it here without the detail of the voice in my head.
Yeah.
But Kristen, so that I started the blog in 2009. I had the event with Kristen in 2006. So 3 years difference. So in those 3 years, Kristen had moved away. And I wrote the story up and I was like, what were we talking about? What were we talking? So I called her up and I said, Kristen, what were we talking about the first night when we saw the first owls?
Mhm.
I remember we were talking about something important. She said, oh, I remember exactly what I was talking about. She said, I was talking about my deepest, most heartfelt definition of what God means to me.
Mhm. Okay.
Now, like I'm not at all churchy, but wow, do I recognize like let's say the mythic power of that statement.
Mhm.
So these events very early on in my own exploration were automatically kind of overlaid with that mythic power, and that's what I've been finding in the stories. So started the blog, started putting UFO stories on there, started putting owl stories on there. Very quickly, people started sending me their owl stories. And then I said, oh, I want to hear these. This is fascinating. So I right at the top of my blog, right at the top of my website, when I do talks like this, I ask people, I want to hear your owl stories. When I talk at conferences, I point to the audience, I want to hear your owl stories. And I've been getting them. And so 13, 14 years really doing this kind of research feels like full time sometimes. So for 14 years, I've been getting, sometimes it ebbs and flows, but I'm going to say most days I get a really good owl story. Some are
Okay. Of
lesser tier where someone says, oh, I saw a pretty owl. And
course.
that's all nice, but that's not what I'm interested in. So I'm looking at these mythic stories. And so the UFO subject, right? So like the UFO subject has got like these, it's like it's a mess. There's like
Yeah.
government conspiracy stuff. There's love and light stuff where there are space angels coming from the
Yeah.
Pleiades. There people are terrified. Some people are like feel it's a blessing. Um, and but I'm not looking at the big giant picture.
Hmm.
I'm only looking at this little sliver of people who have owl and UFO cases co-joined. So I'm like pulling on this one thin, thin, thin little string.
Yeah.
And what I'm finding is these owl stories are so rich. And that mythic overlay that I try to describe is so ever present. So I'm not looking at the big total mystery. I'm looking at a little narrow sliver. And I honestly thought like I would write a little magazine length article and move on.
Right. Like it's almost nothing. Almost.
Except for it's a bottomless pit and the stories are so rewarding. That was my
Yeah.
thought initially, that it's like, oh, this is a little, and I didn't discover the owl thing. Other people had written about this too,
Mhm.
but I'm certainly the one that got the most obsessed and like ended up writing a big fat book initially on owls, and then I wrote three more big fat books. So there's four big fat books out there when the focus is in some form or another UFOs and owls.
I think that it's wonderful to have someone who is dedicated to this type of documentation on the small subjective scale, because to me it seems like a lot of people are really obsessed with finding out what is like the one objective truth, and I'm not so sure that there is any. But
Mm.
I do think that the subjective stories can tell us perhaps most of what we need to know if we pay attention to them in situations like this. And I've been having really interesting owl experiences almost my whole life, and some of those I prefer to keep quiet. Maybe I'll tell you more later on. But there came a time in 2000 2016, it began to pick up for me. And also, it began to affect my now husband. And today, it has gotten to the point where we've both had what seem to be incredibly meaningful owl experiences um, together and also potentially apart. My hubby, he doesn't put quite so much stock into this on his own end because he's used to having experiences more with or around me because it seems like he didn't have any of these experiences until after we got together. And then after we
Mm-hmm.
got married, it really picked up. But I do have a very special owl prop I would like to go grab real quick. I
Sure.
forgot to get it, but it'll make a lot more sense when I grab that. I'll be right back, okay?
Great. I don't know if the viewers are going to see this, but I'm drinking a tiny bit of coffee. Um,
They they won't see it. I'll edit it
oh,
out.
you'll edit it out. Okay. I was wondering. I'm sitting here staring at the screen going, they're watching me. Someone's going to be watching me. So,
Oh, no, no, no. This is pre-recorded, and I forgot that my owl friend, I think, is actually right behind me on this Christmas tree. I think. There he is. Ugh. My blanket. Okay. Uh, so my husband and I, we've been together since 2016
mm-hmm.
and married now the last 4 years. When we first got together, we moved in and it seemed kind of like overnight we developed out of nowhere, just out of the blue, a desire to collect owl things, right? It was very strange. It happened at the same time for us, and we would go we would go out, and whenever we'd see something that was like owl decor that we really loved, we'd have to buy it and take it home. And before this, I'd never had any owl obsession or anything of that nature, and it really took me by surprise. And outside of my noticing that this was developing, we just accepted it like, oh, owls are our thing, and
Mm-hmm.
happily just moved about our way. But then in 2020, a lot of paranormal activity really began escalating. So I'm talking quantum type things like objects manifesting out of nowhere, things moving on their own and reappearing in places where we know that they could not possibly have gone. We talk about that in that episode that you had mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to hear more about that,
Sure, please. Yeah. But keep going. Yeah.
for sure. Um, we moved into a new house, and at that new house, it was about 10 minutes away from a state park. And this park, although it's beautiful and whatnot, I always felt kind of funny around it, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And I wound up having a glimmer person encounter in the house, like a glimmer man, like the Predator movie with the shimmery.
Yeah. I have a story. Keep going, but I'll tell you one. It's not quite the same thing. So, but keep going.
Gotcha. Yeah. And
That's
then
very
my husband,
just oh here I will forgive me for interrupting, but I that predator thing, that predator special effect gets mentioned a lot
yeah.
in my studies. And my studies are more UFOs, but it certainly drifts over into other aspects too. But keep going.
I think it's all related personally, and I think that we're all family. That's just my personal theory. But anyways, 2 weeks later, my husband had that same type of experience in the house too. And I he's about as I say that he's about as psychic as a stale ham sandwich. So that was really unique for him. And then shortly after that, I had an experience with a large, lanky, pale humanoid, what we call, well, my husband would call it, he called it a frog eater because it was by the pond in our backyard. And then after that, I had a really profound owl experience, the first in years with a live owl. I went outside to take out some trash or recycling, and it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I walked out the front door, toting whatever it was, going to the curb. On the front of the lawn, near or off to my right about 10 feet, there was this magnificent barred owl sitting there. And from what I understand, these owls don't come out very much during the day. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
It's they certainly can be seen during the day, so that's not that
Okay.
unusual. But keep going. Yeah.
Okay. The research I had looked up at the time, it said that they didn't come out very often. So that's just what I was kind of going off of. But anyways, this owl, this beautiful big owl was just sitting in the middle of my lawn, and it looked like I startled it immensely. But when I saw it, it had these eyes that seemed bigger than what is natural for
Mm-hmm.
an owl. And it seemed like there was a lot more intelligence going on there. And instead of this owl just flying away and abandoning anything it was looking at, because it wasn't eating anything, it was
Mm-hmm.
literally just sitting there staring at my house. It flew up into a nearby tree and landed on the lowest branch and just stared at me. And I just stood there and I stared at it, and just I telepathically felt inclined to say hello, and that I was happy to see it or whomever it was, and that I thought it was indeed a beautiful being or person, creature,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And it just kind of like cocked its head at me and just kept looking at me. And I felt like it just saw me for who I am, and this connection that I felt with this was utterly amazing. I'd never had anything like that happen with an animal before, or anyone who presented themselves as an animal. I wound up having to, of course, just finish the little chore that I was doing. I did, and when I finished, the moment that I put the recycling or the little bag of trash or whatever into the proper receptacle, the owl flew off. And then ever since then, when I've been doing really important work, or my husband and I have been having really important conversations, a lot of times we'll hear owls hooting, or an owl hooting like right outside of our bedroom window or right outside of our house. And it can be any time of the day or the night. It hasn't happened in a few months now, but for a few years, it was really, it was consistent. It was really consistent. And then this year, this is maybe the most interesting thing. I wanted to go grab something to show you. So this guy,
Okay.
again, I talk about him in the show that I did with my husband. We have no idea where he came from. He manifested into our house one day this year when we were just going through our house and sorting things out. And he is extremely unique. We don't have any other owl with a face like this, nor do we have any furry owls. I don't know if you can see the texture.
Mm-hmm.
It's made of,
It's on a pine cone.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, he just manifested in one of our trees. So we have our house decorated kind of like a forest. We're just very woodsy, that hence all the trees, except for the
Mm-hmm.
Christmas tree, all of our trees stay up year round, just all the plain faux pine. But he just popped up in my favorite tree one day, and neither of us, we talked about it at length, neither of us can figure out where or when we would have gotten him. No idea. And we remember every single owl that we get because each one is special to us. We only choose ones that have a lot of meaning and attraction to us. But he, no idea. So I sleep with this guy now over my bed or over our bed in the garland because to me he's a beautiful symbol of the mystery of owls and of life. So
And that would be the symbol of the owl is reflects that mystery, often an inner mystery. Yeah. Oh, here, let me ask. Just a couple things. You said you recognize the intelligence of the owl. Now, the owl in Greek mythology, it's Athena. That's where we get the name
mhm.
Athens.
Yes.
Is the goddess of wisdom, and she has a companion owl. And then owl it's often pictured on her wrist, and it's what's called a little owl, and they actually are little owls. They're these tiny little owls that are in the Mediterranean area, and so she has a tiny companion owl. So she is recognized as the goddess of wisdom, and she has an animal that reflects that wisdom. So what you're saying is like, wow, people look at an owl and they say, wow, there's an intelligence there. There is an eerie power to the owl. Now, so what we have, just like our eyes are in our head, and we can like I can look right and left with my eyes, right?
Yeah.
Owls can't do that. Owls, their eyes are locked in their head in a different way. We have round eyeballs.
Mhm.
Owls have like cylinders. Oh, here I'll bring the peanut butter jar thing again. Little cylinders. Owls are cylinders, and so what the shape of the eye allows them to have much better night vision.
Okay.
So they have this very and so since we can move our eyes right and left, our necks don't need to move that much, right? Because we can do our looking back and forth just by moving our eyes. So that's where you get that eerie thing where owls have that unsettling, almost robotic motion to their head. Super smooth, super fluid. It's funny that I just talked about the peanut butter jar with the sighting, and the eerie thing about the sighting was that the craft or whatever it was, the structure in the sky moved so smoothly. But that's how an owl's head moves. So everyone says that, and I'm certain ancient man, or like the mythology of the owl's wisdom
Mhm.
arises from that. So most birds have the eyes a little bit more on the side of their head.
Uh-huh.
Owls have their eyes facing forward. So that gives them a very human-like quality, and it gives them that eerie majesty that they have.
Mhm.
And so I think every person, right from all throughout history, says exactly the same thing that you just said. And
Yeah.
I've seen plenty of owls. So one of the things, owls on the ground, this is an odd one. Some owls will land on the ground.
Mhm.
Did it have anything? Did it have a mouse or anything? Did you know if it was eating anything on the ground?
Oh, I guess you didn't hear me. No, it wasn't eating anything. I was able just to see plainly. No.
Okay.
It wasn't pecking. This is the weirdest part. It was just sitting in the lawn staring at the house. I've never seen an owl act like that.
Hmm.
And during the year 2020 to 2021 was one of the most paranormally active years I've ever had. I had the glimmer person experience. I had the pale crawler type experience. My husband saw the glimmer person experience in the house. That was the year he also saw a brownie, like a
Hmm.
small house fairy in one of his clients' houses. What else? Oh my gosh, we started having UFO encounters as well. And they continued until um yeah, July of this year was the last time that he and I had one. We were in the backyard and saw what we thought was originally a star. And I was just looking up the stars, admiring them, and well, I'm sorry, it wasn't a star. According to the sky map, it was Venus. but it started slowly pulling back. But strangely, on the Sky Map app, everything was stationary. So all of these things kind of went together for me and for us. So that's why I believe you that there is some type of massive connection. And of course, I have other experiences, and maybe later I'll share those with you.
So, as a researcher, the question I ask people:
Yeah.
what was going on in your life leading up to the event, and
I,
what was going on? What changed afterwards? And I don't
yeah.
care whether it's a UFO event. I don't care whether it's an owl sighting, and I don't care if it's a powerful synchronicity. I'm trying to weight those things, those three things: owl sighting, UFO sighting or UFO event,
Mm-hmm.
and powerful synchronicity. Those to me are all, you know, I try to keep them, I try not to prioritize one more than the other. I try not to weight one more than the other. And I'm treating each of those three things the same. And I ask the same question for each. So you pretty much just said it. You said there
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of paranormal events in your life. And then after that, it seems like things had ramped up and yeah, so you were at a time of high uh, activity in your life.
Yeah, and also something I'd like to add to this for your consideration, which I think is extremely relevant, extreme illness and near death, because I was also going through a lot of that.
When you say near death, what do you mean? If you don't have to, I just now I'm genuinely curious because.
Of course, no, it's okay. So I explained to you about being very ill after
Mhm.
being a paranormal investigator and a paranormal counselor. And then I was also doing other types of healing and extreme counseling work, which, as an energetic empath, kind of like Edgar Casey, you cannot overdo it, at least not in my experience, or else you'll die. You run the batteries down, you run the health down.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me because I'm the only one in my whole family who um, seems to be this way. And something else for your consideration, I am Rh negative.
As am
Uh,
I.
right. Okay, so you may already know a little bit about that. And I come from almost purely Irish and German background. So I do believe that all of this follows bloodlines. But I had retired from all of this stuff and was still extremely ill, extreme adrenal deficiencies, as well as other things. And it came to a head in 2020. I wound up having to see a lot of specialists and whatnot for customized care. And then in April of this year, kind of at the height of a lot of this stuff, which I had just met Tim Swartz, like we spoke about, literally the month before. So in March, he and I started working together and whatnot. And in April, I didn't realize still how deficient and sick I was. I was feeling extremely unwell. I think it was April 24th, if I remember properly. And I went to lie down and just take a nap, take a rest. And I can't recall if I had fallen asleep or if it was somewhere in between, but I found myself in this, like, out of my body. And I was in a round bubble room that looked and felt like black velvet, like the most luxurious black velvet ever imaginable. And it was thick and plush and wonderful. It was so comforting. And then there was this beautiful, majestic woman's voice. It was the most beautiful voice I'd ever heard. And she was talking to me telepathically. And I could not see her. All I could see were the walls of this bubble room. And I've been told by one person that she is an Egyptian goddess of, actually, wisdom and guidance of non-human people who came to get me if I wanted to leave. So she was singing in harmony with this incredibly gorgeous what I would call a guitar, but that's just because I have no other word for it. I really don't know what it was. She was singing in harmony with this, and then also simultaneously communicating to me that, you're suffering, you've done your best. If you want to leave right now,
Mm.
it will be okay, and I will take you to learn more elsewhere. And I had to sit and think for a moment with her, and then I asked her questions. Well, will things get better? Is there any chance that I can heal? What else is there still for me to do here to help
Mm.
humankind? Things like that. And she answered all of my questions, saying that if you go back, if you want to go back, we will send you back. There are people waiting outside of your room right now who will be responsible for healing you enough to give you a boost so that by next April, next spring, you will be completely healed and healthy. But it will still be a rocky road in the meantime. And either way, your essentially she was kind of saying your karmic debt is forgiven, and you have done far better than we thought that you would. So if you want to go with us now, you will still move up. Move up where and to what? I don't know. I have no idea. Um, I did wind up coming back though. She told me that if I was serious about coming back, I had to try to physically, move my body because that was the ceiling of the contract, essentially, which I did, and it was extremely difficult. I I've never felt so at peace. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It was the most peaceful encounter that I've ever had, but simultaneously the most exciting. And I was sad in a sense that I chose to come back here, but I did. And I really did heal immensely. And now I'm still healing. I still have a ways to go, but where I was then compared to where I am now, I do absolutely believe that there were miracles worked that day, and owls have played a big part in my daily experiences for many, many years. And I wonder if sometimes if she wasn't the one who maybe sent this owl or, something. I don't know. Goodness, I'm sorry. Maybe I sound a little insane.
No, 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 no. This is exactly what I'm researching. This is exactly what I hear all the time. So this is the thing that. So honestly, like as far as being a UFO investigator and stuff like this, like these are the this book is like filled with stories, just like you just told me. So this is in my wheelhouse. This is exactly the kind of stuff that I'm I'm following. This is the string I'm pulling on. Remember, I said like I'm only pulling on the string as owls and the so what I'm finding is stories like yours. Here, one quick question: the so that you called it a near-death experience or an out-of-body experience in the velvet bubble.
Mhm.
When
I
did that
consider it
happen?
both.
Pardon?
I consider it both
Yeah. Oh,
intertwined
yeah,
with
yeah,
that.
yeah. That and that's funny because some people are very clinical, and I felt like there was quite recently. I was very pragmatic. I said, no, no, no. A near-death experience means you have to die. You have to be like, I'm. Some doctor's got to like note that your like heart has stopped, and I no longer cling to that. And that has been a bunch of things have been so helpful for me in the last 10 years or so, where I'm allowing myself. I say it
Ah,
over and over again. I allow myself to take 2 steps back
mhm.
and not cling, right? So the owl have the talons, and
Yeah.
I realize I'm using that term cling. So not to cling to my own presuppositions and such. So but the combo NDE OBE, when did that happen in comparison to the owl in your yard, like on the calendar?
Oh, for sure. So the owl in my yard, I think that was, I want to say like March or August of 2020. I would have to look back at my calendar. I'm in
Hmm.
the middle of getting new devices
Oh,
set
yeah,
up and
don't worry.
stuff.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. So,
Okay, and then this most recent NDE OBE was April 24th of this year.
Okay, so the owl preceded you. You saw the owl in your yard, and I wrote this down.
Yeah.
You said that the owl saw you for who you are. You said it saw me for who I am. And then so like what happened with the owl event? What in your life changed, right? So I'm seeing this as one singular story. Yeah,
It
it's
is.
all like it's one long thread. Yeah. So what you're saying is normal
Mhm,
in my studies.
mhm.
It's not normal for the people who work for UFO reporting outfits where they just want to talk to someone who saw a dot in the sky and they never ask these deeper questions. Or so, but what I'm finding is what you're sharing right here, right now, is very consistent
Mhm.
within the overall stories that I'm collecting. So, how are
Yeah.
you doing right now, health wise?
Question. I'm doing very well now physically, and I am looking forward to healing the rest of the way.
So here, let me just share one thing. Um, a woman contacted me. So the when I what I'm doing is people. I'm going to jump around a little bit here, but a guy contacted me, and his friend of mine who is a researcher, and he said, Mike, you're driving me crazy. Your research just makes me crazy. You are not being scientific. And I said, what do I care? I'm not a scientist, which is a good answer. I thought, like, I'm not a scientist. I'm not beholden to the scientific method to what I do feel I am doing is I feel like I am a folklorist. And I think that's fair to say. I'm a folklorist. I am collecting stories and I'm trying to archive them. I'm trying to publish what I can, right? I mean, I get the thousands of stories I have on my files. People say, "Could you write another owl book?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, I could write 50 owl books, but it'd all be the same story. It'd be
Yeah,
very similar
yeah,
to the story you just told. It would be that story over and over and over. You tell that story 500 times, right? What is it? Who are you serving by telling the same story over and over again? So here's this is woman contacts me,
yeah.
and she had been dealing with UFO contact experiences. The, this is some years ago, like the stuff of in Bud Hopkins books and things like that. So she was living in a city, and she was taking part in a support group. So she was there trying to she was actively, what was going on leading up to the event. She
Mhm.
was actively trying to come to terms with her own fears. She pouring down rain. She lives near the ocean. Pouring down rain. The dog, her dog, big dog, wants to go
Yeah.
out for a walk. So she takes
Mhm.
her dog for a walk, and she walks on a jetty, like a big jetty that goes out into the salt water. And so that's where she walks the dog. She's walking the dog. It's pouring down rain. She gets about halfway out to the jetty, and she's thinking, "What am I doing? What am I
Yeah,
doing?" I'm like, "Why? It's pouring down rain. I shouldn't be out here walking the dog. I would never walk the dog in the pouring rain." So she
yeah.
turns around to head back, and there's an owl standing behind her. So when she turns around, she's facing this owl. She says her dog is very high strung, very quick to chase things, other dogs and things and birds. The dog sat down like it was confronting royalty.
Ah,
So she sees this big owl, and the owl flies off, and she goes back home. And shortly thereafter, she had a pain in her arm that turned out to be a form of cancer. And she went through traditional chemotherapy, and she said it took her right to the edge of death. It took her right to the edge of death. And she's now doing so she said, I've been cancer free for over 15 years. And I said, what did you think the owl was? Do you think the owl healed you, or do you think the owl, like, would you? She said, no, the owl did not heal me. Right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
the owl said, what was the owl there for? And she said, the owl was there to tell me that my life was about to change and it would not be easy. So people will ask me, is the owl good or bad? I'm like, oh, I cannot answer that it's good or bad. Like, I got some stories that are certainly where the owl is scary, And I
Mm-hmm.
got certainly some magical stories where it feels like the owl like performed some healing. I have a lot of stories where owls save people's lives. Straight up, like owl in the road, they slow down, the owl doesn't move, they're stopped, and then another car comes racing around the corner, and on like a blind curve, and it was in their lane. And if they had not stopped, they would be dead. So I got a lot
Right.
of stories like that. So magical, powerful events surrounding the owl. So I asked her, well, how's your life changed since all this? She said, before seeing that owl and having all the experiences with my own health, I was scared of my own shadow.
Aw.
And now I am afraid of nothing.
Hmm.
So this is that's really important for me to ask that question. What was going on leading up to the event? What was going on after? There's no UFOs in this story, except for the fact that she had UFO experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But it's everything about the power of the owl, the mythic power of the owl. So those are the stories. It's that flavor of the story that I'm most that's that mood. Like that, is that a good story or is that a bad story?
Mm-hmm. Well,
Good and bad or go
I
on.
think that's just up to opinion. That's all. And maybe I'm a little different. I don't see, typically speaking, so-called good or bad. If someone tells me that something is good or something is bad, I believe that that is their reality and I respect that. And so I
Mhm.
typically, unless they invite me, I don't challenge them. I let them believe that life is whatever they like it to be. I let people think that I am that I am or what or anything that they think that I am want me to be. Same with owls, same with UFOs and fairies and science and health. I just like to watch stories unfold.
Mhm, mhm,
But for me, I don't judge things as being good or bad. I just judge them as opportunities and as messengers of
mhm,
what I think it remains to be seen. And I see everyone, whether they're human, non-human, animal, etc., as being an angel or a messenger of sorts, and as being, you could say, like a fairy godmother or a fairy godfather, anything of that nature, because they're providing opportunities. And sometimes those messengers or fairy godparents may not be all love and light. It has
mhm,
to be a certain way to give someone a certain storyline opportunity. So that's how I see it. I think otherwise, yeah, good and bad is just a matter of opinion. And no matter how kind and loving I am, for example, I'm always going to probably be the villain in someone else's story.
mhm.
It is what it is. So I don't know. That's my take on it.
Okay, so my take is that the owl is the totem
Mhm.
of the transformational process
Okay.
or the transformational experience, right? So that's kind of, and I this is after boiling down thousands of stories I've heard. Like people say, what does the owl mean? I'm like, oh, that's a great
Mhm.
question. It's hard to say. So the owl is the totem of the transformational experience. People change in the
Mhm.
presence of an owl, or it is a marker of a change in their life.
I agree with
So
that.
so this is there's five things. I should be able to list this off. Depending, I can be four things if I leave. So owls and UFOs. People say, "Oh, are owls and UFOs connected?" I'm like, a couple of years ago, I would have said definitely yes, they're connected, but I'm a little more nuanced now. So when I'm getting owls in meditation, people meditating see owls.
Mhm.
They'll sit in their living room. They'll have their eyes closed. When they open their eyes, there's an owl staring at them through the window. I've got more than one story of people in the forest meditating, often with a profound intention, like what's my spirit name? And they open their eyes and there's an owl on a branch staring at them,
Huh.
like eye to eye, close up, within reach. Uh, Owls are connected to psychedelics, most particularly mushrooms. People who take mushrooms in a ritual setting, like a journeying setting, they'll see owls. I got a lot of stories of those. Owl. This is people going through shamanic initiation will see owls. This is well understood in the community of shamans.
Mhm.
And and it's funny. I was on a podcast and Someone
Oh
says,
my
I kind
gosh,
of,
that reminds me. I am so sorry to interrupt you. That reminds me, you just jogged my memory. Around that time, I did do mushrooms in 2019 going into 2020, Amanita.
mm-hmm.
And then in 20, oh my goodness. It was 2020. Yeah, it was 2022. I did do an ayahuasca ceremony. I
How
did. Yeah.
was it?
Wonderful. I had a brilliant time. I was up and safely handling fire well into the second dose, walking. And even though I was having the hallucinations and whatnot, Mother Ayahuasca was with me and she guided me. She was guiding my steps. And
Mm-hmm.
I got to work with her very closely, and she answered a lot of my questions about life. She showed me who the jesters are that people see a lot of the time. I met a dragon. There were giant centipedes, and it was one of the most wonderful times of my life.
Wow. Okay. So shamanic initiation.
Yeah.
So this is funny. So it's